society. Our first guest I want to introduce is Birgitta Jonsdottir. Since 2009, she's representing the Pirate Party in the Althing, the Parliament of Iceland. No?
I'm sorry. I represent the Pirate Party since 2013. I created
13 in the Althing. She's well known as an activist for freedom of speech, information, as well as for environmental protection. Please give her a warm welcome, Birgitta Jonsdottir. Please take a seat. The second guest I would like to introduce is Sylvia Steinitz. She's an experienced journalist for over 20 years now. She's the former chief editor of The Wienerin, which is a feminist magazine, and she's now working for Der Stern. Please a warm welcome for Sylvia Steinitz. Before we are beginning, we'll just show you a little surprise. We have a video for you. Please enjoy it.
Ms. Jonsdottir, from your point of view, what are the biggest threats for the freedom of the web, what we are experiencing at the moment? Are those the trolls? Are those the spies, the authoritarian regimes? Are those the extremists, or is it Facebook?
I think it's all combined, and you can't point to one group. It's like one of the things I noticed when we talk about the internet, we talk about it as if it's separated from human nature, as it's separated from our offline communities, standards, and governance. It's not. It's just a tool. And when Facebook says that they have now the largest community, the largest democracy in the world in Facebook, and try to steer it in such a way that they control what people do in different countries, then we're in a very dangerous space. But I want to say, and I want to defend Snowden, because Snowden said in his first interview that we needed to do three things. We needed to make encryption more day-to-day, more accessible and easy to use. We needed to change local and global laws. That was his main conclusion. And in that spirit, because we can't only talk about, I think it's good what you said about that we need to create collaborations between countries, but we also need to raise awareness in our own communities, raise awareness about why do we need privacy? Can we have a functional democracy if everybody just votes openly and everybody knows what you vote for? What if Donald Trump is going to win the elections? Are people in the United States going to feel comfortable about the accessibility of the government to their private data? Is not really as free as many think. Because, I know that because of my involvement with WikiLeaks, that I was under surveillance. I mean, I have official records about how the US government wanted to get access to my metadata. We took it to court, and they won. And so what is metadata? Metadata is your digital persona. It is much more invasive than your email, or your phone call, or your text. And metadata is a collection of all your behavior and who you meet and when. And if you are under surveillance like I have been, and I have my phone here with me, and many of you will have been with me at a different place, because I was at a Pirate Party meeting this morning. Now you're in a different location with me, and then I might meet some of you later on this conference. And then, according to the data that Snowden provided, that means that you will be under special scrutiny. You've done nothing wrong. You've just been in the same room as I. And so that is a very serious threat to democracy. And if we care about democracy in the offline world, and we want to bring it closer to the general public, and we want to give people a reason to trust in the democratic institutions. Does anybody here remember what happened when the trust in the democratic institution was so low as it is today? What happened before Second World War? So we're having a rise of extremists all over the world, including Donald Trump. What happens if the extremists, if the neo-Nazis will have access to all our personal data? So we need to really strengthen protections, local and global laws, and there have already been some initiatives by the UN and the Council of Europe and the International Parliamentary Union. And I encourage you to look into the guidelines, the very strong guidelines and recommendations that you can find there.
Okay, Birgitta, I think you can officially change your name to Cassandra now, because Donald Trump is in the White House. Maybe the neo-Nazis don't have access to our data yet, but Donald Trump might have access to certain data. What has changed since your talk back then?
Nothing. Unfortunately, the microphone, yes. Unfortunately, very little has changed. I am just sort of vindicated for being right, which is really annoying. And I was actually answering the Estonian president, who is a favorite of mine to despise, because he was tearing down Snowden and saying that the governmental authorities are not interested in our emails and they will never read them and so forth. And that's why I was sort of explaining why it's so important to think about the other stuff that they have access to. And we've just had a talk about how data is gathered, and it is the behind data that is much more important than the letters in our emails, even if they can be important. Actually, in the United States, we now have a government that is controlled by extreme right neo-Nazis. We have people that have been pushing the rhetoric of, instead of Jews, we have the Muslims and the Mexicans. And we're at a very dangerous junction right now. If we do not, both as individuals and communities, learn before it's too late. We have a rise of extremism everywhere. It's still rising. And we can't rely on polls anymore. I think if we could just get one young person inspired to go out and vote, that would be a huge achievement. Because the reason why the Pirate Party did not get 30% in the elections is that our people, our supporters, who are primarily under 25, did not bother to go out and vote. And the people that are loyal to the Conservative Party are above certain age, and they all showed up. And I don't think this is the main problem in democracy. The main problem is, of course, that we don't spend time on building up our democracy every day, like we were tending our garden.
There are moments when we actually become aware of what's happening around the world, and that awareness has been fueled by certain whistleblowers who worked or who risked a lot in the last years. One of them is, of course, Edward Snowden. You met him in Moscow last year. Was it just like we would imagine, with bugged hotel rooms and secret agents sitting in the bar pretending to be normal guests?
The reason why I went finally to meet him in person, we've known about each other before he came out. But I never met him, and I've never had a chance to speak with him on the phone or anything like that before. So it was very interesting to... I actually went because I was worried about him after Donald Trump won, because I fear that he is a big sort of bargaining chip between very big powers. So I just wanted to go and actually see if he was okay. We were doing like a documentary about not whistleblowing, not privacy, but the state of democracy. So I went there with Lawrence Lessig. I don't know if you know who Lessig is, but he was in Iceland for half a year to help us get the academia on board with our new constitution that we crowdsourced. He did tremendously important work for those of us that have been fighting for it. But he is also the inventor of CC. And he worked with the late Aaron Swartz, and is a huge inspiration. So we actually just went there to have an in-depth discussion with Snowden about the state of democracy.
And do you have the feeling like he's safe? Is he safe?
I don't know. I mean, he's maybe safe from the U.S. government, but of course, at the hotel when we were there the night before to do pre-interviews, and then the day after when he was there, it was like crawling with agents. They were not pretending to be anything else than agents. But I mean, I've met a lot of people that are famous for different reasons, and he is so incredibly humble, and my respect for him grew even more after meeting him in person.
People always call him a whistleblower. Hasn't Edward Snowden become much more than a whistleblower and a symbol? What would you call him?
Well, for me, it's just primarily an inspiration to be courageous. He was willing to sacrifice his relatively easy life to raise awareness about a serious situation within a system that he actually respected and believed in. And that's a common trend with whistleblowers that we hear about because they've done something big, is that originally they have a tremendous faith in the system they live in, and they become shocked that the system is not working. They try to amend it from within to raise awareness, like in the case of Chelsea Manning, but don't get anywhere with it. Or it is more risky to blow the whistle within the system than go outside and try to raise awareness of journalists about what they feel is, in this case, this incredible collection of data by American citizens, by their own government, is considered to be unconstitutional.
That's the problem. It's not only the problem in America, where whistleblowing is actually life-threatening. And I guess we all agree that Chelsea Manning has paid a dear price, and hopefully her ordeal will be over in May. But let's just look at Germany. I mean, in Germany, whistleblowers don't get protection like they should. And I would just like to quote from the program of the German Pirate Party. It's in German. I hope everybody will understand that. But the Pirate Party is the only party that actually pays attention to this aspect. And it says, die Piratenpartei Deutschland setzt sich für eine allgemeine gesetzliche Regelung zum Whistleblower-Schutz ein, da diese dringend notwendig ist. Die durch das Bundesverfassungsgericht und durch das Bundesarbeitsgericht gesetzte Rechtsprechung in Bezug auf Whistleblowing ist für den juristischen Laien nicht verständlich und stellt somit eine nicht hinzunehmende Rechtsunsicherheit dar. Jeder Whistleblower begibt sich dadurch in straf- und zivilrechtliche Unwägbarkeiten. In short, when you want to blow the whistle, you don't know whether you will get out of it alive or safe. What are your suggestions? What does need to change, or what kind of laws need to be implemented in order to give whistleblowers more protection, and where have you already seen it?
Well, one of the things, when I was in my other party that I helped co-create back in 2008, I started to work on the Icelandic Modern Media Initiative, which was to create a digital safe haven for freedom of information, expression and speech. And we looked specifically at whistleblowing acts from around the world, and ironically, one of the best ones was actually in the United States. And we modeled our suggestions on that. But as we know, you might have something you consider to be perfect law, and then you might have many other factors that will play in such a way that the law does not really protect whistleblowers. And so after 9/11 in the United States, with the Patriot Act, a lot of the good stuff within the Whistleblowing Act there sort of got overridden by national security clearances. We created a Whistleblowing Act in Iceland that is still waiting to be spoken for by a minister. But one thing you can also do is to have very clear legislation on the when it comes to, for example, public servants, on how, when they're supposed to be blowing the whistle, or telling if something is corrupt or not as it is, and when they're supposed to be what's the English word for it? When they're supposed to maintain silence, on personal cases and so forth. I mean, we actually had a minister have to resign in Iceland last term, not because of the Panama Papers, but the first minister to go was the Interior Minister, because there was a leak on a very compromising private data of an asylum seeker that her assistant leaked in order to try to take away support from not throwing him out of Iceland. So it's important to have also a discussion about what information should be in the public domain and what information should not be there.
That's a very important point. To my knowledge, there is not such a thing yet, like an ethical code of conduct, or to say like what is whistleblowing, and like sort of a checklist that if I have a secret and I think it should be out in the public domain, I can go through the checklist to check whether this is really worth doing it, or whether I should go out with it. Is there something like a catalog for whistleblowers? Or would it be a thing? Would it be good to do such a checklist, to make one?
Well, often, I mean, it is something that would be great if the ombudsman would have something like this, and guidelines for people. We could maybe have like an ombudsman for whistleblowers, or if you have a strong ombudsman, it's really different and often very depending on who is the ombudsman at the time. But I think it is like, because there is a certain code of ethics and a certain agreed values for human rights. And when you apply the same ethics and values on the digital space, it is completely, there is nothing that would separate these ethics, but somehow these two domains have been separated, and so we are constantly fighting for human rights in cyber, where we are in general just fighting for human rights everywhere. However, one thing I've learned is that because we are so different, so when I say democracy, I'm meaning something entirely different than people in Russia that are governing there, or people in China or Saudi Arabia. I mean, China defines itself as a democracy, you know. So, and maybe we need to understand that we might have a brilliant solution for whistleblowers in one country, and then when you try to apply that solution, it doesn't work. But that's why it took us a long time. It took us a long time in Iceland to figure out how to make Icelandic Whistleblowing Act fit Iceland, because we are so few. It's like a little village. So it's very different to be, everybody knows who's the whistleblower. You know, if you try to be a source, everybody will figure out, okay, so there's one person that's an expert in this particular institute. Yeah, that's this guy. So you have to make sure that you have in place then protections that will protect you from being, you know, character assassinated, which has often been the case in Iceland if you try to blow the whistle on some type of corruption, or you actually, like there was this famous case in Iceland where scientists were asked to analyze this big dam that was built in the east, and one of them, you know, brought forward information the government didn't want to hear, and that information was basically put in the drawer, and the scientist had a very difficult time finding a job. So, like with everything in human society, things tend to be very complicated. So after spending 8 years in Parliament, I have reached the conclusion that we should have very simple laws, because the more complex they become, including whistleblowing acts, including privacy protections, the easier it is to manipulate it. by those that have an army of lawyers.
Absolutely. Our talk is called Whistleblowers and Their Role in Modern Society. Do you think that implementing laws, or simple laws, or laws at all, is also dependent on the public perception of what constitutes a whistleblower? I mean, like, look at America. Some people regard Edward Snowden and Chelsea Manning as heroes. The other half regards them as traitors. How important is the public perception of whistleblowers for their protection? Like, do lawmakers or politicians react? Like, if we had a majority of a population that said whistleblowing is important, do you think it would change something, or would it still be difficult to get good whistleblowing protection laws through?
Well, I think that, in general, the more the public perception is open to awareness about various different aspects of, access to information, the necessity of, being the watchman of the powerful is of the good. But I think any person that is going to be speaking truth to power or challenging power is always going to be in a vulnerable position. It is, of course, always important to have good legal guidelines. But the more you try to go into details and try to do patchwork on complicated issues, you are going to get into trouble. And I really do think we need to start to talk more about the spirit of laws. What is the intention of a law? Because we very often seem to, at least in Iceland, seem to deviate from it. Our politicians have said time and time again, it's unethical, but it's legal. So maybe we would reverse that concept. So if it is unethical, then it is in the spirit of the law, not legal. I guess because my country, despite all the mythology of how old our democracy is in parliament, it's a very young democracy. And that gives an opportunity for some innovation that you don't see possible in the older democracies. I have noticed that the European countries and the United States, but in particularly the European countries, feel that they are superior in their democracies, and so there is no necessity to learn from others. And they are very unwilling to, for example, look at some of the innovation that I've seen in Africa. I have been very impressed with countries that I know very little about, but I've learned about through my work with the International Parliamentary Union. Cameroon, the parliamentarians from there had some of the best amendments to the resolution I wrote, inspired by Snowden, on the importance of privacy in our modern democracies, or our increasingly technology-based democracies. But when it comes to demonizing different groups, we should always become aware of that the people that we tolerate the least, like we see this great divide between people now. It's really extreme. I mean, I often lose faith in humanity when I go on Twitter and I read some of the sort of tweets. I very often go on the Donald Trump Twitter feed to read how people are talking, and it is so divided. It is like there is no way to build a bridge between these two peoples. I think it is our responsibility as individuals to try to find ways to listen, and in particular for me as a politician or a poetician, it is extremely important that I go out there and I listen to why people feel that nobody cares about them. Maybe they are not aware of that a lot is being done because that never gets into the headlines. Or maybe there is a massive space for improvement. And we should not only, I mean, there is a lot of dark sides to whistleblowers. There's a lot of whistleblowers that are actually just blowing the whistle for vendetta. You know, there is not like all whistleblowers have a big halo around their head. But there is this tendency of oversimplification of everything. But, you know, the whistleblowers that I know and worked with, you know, they have done great service. But I also know of some, you know, not so noble whistleblowers. I also know that a lot of platforms that you should be able to trust are being abused, and there is no way to verify a lot of stuff that's being thrown out there as leaks. So we always have to just listen to our own inner moral compass and try to figure out if something is feeling like it's rotten or used to manipulate public opinion, because it's very easy to manipulate people, and particularly with the type of data sets that we've been hearing about here today, it is very easy. You know, and one of the things I would love to see is actually to see a legislation. I don't know if this is completely unrealistic, but I've just been thinking about it for a long time, that there should be more transparency about the algorithms that are being used and what data sets are being put together in order to profile individuals or groups. But I don't know if that's realistic.
Well, one thing that I noticed is that some, like I would say, one of the reasons why we're not getting ahead as fast as all the people in this room think we should is that politicians and the mainstream public simply don't know anything about it. They don't even know what an algorithm is. Like technological development has been so fast, and the masses cannot follow. Mm-hmm. And you can either abuse that lack of knowledge, or you can try to catch up with everything. But would you say that, like from your work, are politicians informed enough about what they're dealing with, the laws that they have to decide on? Do they even know what they're signing?
No, I mean, in general, the way at least legislation functions in Iceland is that, you know, parliamentarians are usually just only aware of like 10% of what is being pushed through the parliament. I have managed to avert a lot of very horrible accidents from happening, intentive or not. There's like this relentless attempts by very many different authorities to do sort of get permissions to do minority reports on various groups. And just like last year, I managed to find, I just happened to be in a meeting with the finance committee, and they were changing laws to, in regard to make stronger laws against tax havens. But in it, there was, for some reason, a provision for the import authority, the toll authority, to start to profile people. Like I listened to the guy and said, "Are you describing Minority Report, or are you aware of what you are trying to convince us to do?" And I managed to get it out, but that was just because I happened to be there. I mean, that's really scary. So one of the reasons I co-founded the Pirate Party in Iceland was I felt that we needed more geeks in the parliament that actually, and I'm talking about geeks in the really wide context, but people that are actually capable of recognizing, how technology is being abused constantly. Mm. But one of the things, I'm not gonna become old in Parliament, or older. I'm not gonna run again. It's probably gonna be a short term. So after that, I think it's extremely, I'm training 9 new people, which is really awesome. But I think it's very important that, let's say the German pirates might not be able to get a lot of people in. I don't know how the situation is. It's equally important to educate and inform legislators about, it's not really smart to make a lot of the things that they're trying to implement. And to train them to see laws from the human rights aspect in cyber. it's scary how little knowledge base is there. It's really terrifying, you know, and I'm not only talking, I mean, actually we are a pretty good situation right now in Iceland because we have so many people that are, you know, have this ability in the parliament. I think it's the biggest in the history anywhere in the world when it comes to percentage, but of that sort of knowledge. But we need to get more that type of knowledge into more legislative bodies, and particularly it's very important to get this into the place that it matters, which is into the ministries and where the policies are being made, because it is totally impossible the way we run our democracies now to make legislation be resilient enough so that it can actually deal with the advancement of technology. And so if we don't change that, and I think this is a very important, it's a very important message for you guys, is that we have to figure out how we can solve the foundation of stuff, how we can fix what we built on instead of being always reacting to bad things. We have to be proactive, and we have to start to build a vision on what we want to replace these sort of outdated models that are getting less and less trust with the general public. And it's very problematic how the trust in sort of the pillars of democracy are fading, and we are seeing direct assault on media as well, and the justice system, not only in the United States. This happened in Britain as well. So we have to learn from history, and we have to also recognize who are the people that are financing these extremes, you know. So how can we be proactive is something we should be thinking about from the moment we wake up and until we go to sleep.
The loss of trust in the system coincides with the rise of populists. In Europe, in America, we have populists on the rise in Europe. We have a bully in the White House. Right now, it seems like people are in search of a leading figure. Whereas, if we compare it to the work of the Pirate Party, for example, who say, you know, the responsibility lies with us, and we, as people, must take the power, and as you always say, give the power back to the people. But it seems like right now, there's not so much interest in that, and people feel like they want to hand everything over to the strong man, and he'll deal with it. And then let's come back to the whistleblowing part. Is whistleblowing just one aspect of a bigger thing that we have to put in our heads? Is whistleblowing just one part of an active democratic citizen?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, whistleblowing is just like a public service, yeah. You know, in some way, and we usually only hear about the whistleblowers that you know are receiving the heavy-handed sentences or reactions. But there are lots of other whistleblowers or sources that we don't know who are. And there have been lots more that have been sources for stuff from NSA since Snowden, at least 2 or 3. So the attempts of governments, like usually when something like this happens, is that they, you know, they find the scapegoat, punish that person in order to get others to be less keen to sacrifice themselves. So, but that just did not work. And I think in many ways it's been extraordinary to see the support for Chelsea Manning. Because I remember when it was very hard to get any support or acknowledgement, and a lot of people have forgotten who she is and what she did, but there wouldn't be any WikiLeaks and there wouldn't be any Snowden without her really courageous act at a very young age, and it was just, it's still really unreal that she's actually coming out of prison I just heard that she's not going to have to go in a halfway house or anything like that. She's just coming out. She's going to be free. May 17th. I mean, we should celebrate.
Absolutely.
But you know, it's not going to be. It's never easy for anybody to come out of this sort of traumatic experience. So I mean, but it's hugely inspirational to see somebody, despite everything that's been going on, you know, together.
On a more critical note, I said before that we have a time where bullies and populists are on the rise because we're in search of not us here, but many people are in search of a strong figure. Isn't it also the case where we look for the hero whistleblower and they should do everything and we can just react and gasp and go, wow, she did that? Shouldn't we all be not whistleblowers? We cannot all be whistleblowers, or maybe we should not all be whistleblowers, but isn't it also a bit easy to you know, put the load on those single heroes who come out and who risk a lot? And where does our part begin? Should we all be whistleblowers?
Well,
can we be?
No, not really. I mean, you know, each person in each community has different roles, and we just have to find, like, you know, when I was organizing activism back in the day, was sort of direct activism, nobody would ever do anything that they felt uncomfortable doing. So, you know, I would usually be the, you know, the sort of civic media person. I would be doing the media thing because I was a single mom and I could not afford to go in prison. But I could make sure that, you know, my citizen journalism about this action could be used to show what really happened. Others were willing to go and, you know, potluck on a machine or or throw green yogurt on the people from the aluminum industry and call it greenwash. But so, you know, you should never sort of do an action or, you know, in your life where you feel that, you know, you are going beyond your comfort zone, because, you know, then you're probably not going to do anything. But when it comes to this sort of hero worshipping and sort of like our personal Jesuses everywhere, in a way it's important for people to have mentors. But you know, I saw an interview with John Lennon that was made around the time when him and Yoko were doing War Is Over If You Want It, like this you that people tend to forget. Or, you know, when I want something, I need to go and change things. And he was pointing out, you know, in this interview that people are always looking for, you know, an authority figure that they can sort of, you know, move responsibility to. And in a sense, it's understandable. The more complex our societies become, the more we feel that we are powerless. And to become empowered is also often a very scary thing. You know, it's like it might move you out of your comfort zone. But right now, I'm seeing this tendency. It was very interesting for me to see what happened in Iceland, because, like, we, the Pirates, were trying to, we base all our internal and external structure on horizontalism. So if somebody asks, wants to make me a leader, I would say, hey, why, you know, I think Smart McCarthy might be a great prime minister. You know, so I'm always trying to deflect this attempt by the media that needs to create strong figureheads so that they can always go to the same person and get the same answers, and sort of like fits within the script that they have created in their heads. And it's a full-time work to try to deflect this, you know, need to create strong leaders. But now the people seem to be really eager for strong leaders. You can see this tendency everywhere. And in Iceland, it was so interesting that we have like these two opposite parties. Like we have the left Greens and you have the Conservatives with one of the Panama princes. And there were actually some people that were willing to vote for either one of them because of the leaders, but not because of the policies. And so maybe you need to create like a fake leader that doesn't have any real authority, but is a sort of a, this sort of leader without.
Is that a recommendation for the Pirate Party
I
in
don't
Germany?
know.
Maybe?
I don't know. It's like
create the counter Schulz or something.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it could, like, even, it's like the irony of media and people. It's so funny. So, like, when we're just founding the Pirate Party back in 2012, and one media person said, "What should I title you?" And I thought I would mock them a little bit and say, "Just call me Captain." And then, like, throughout the years, they think this is an official title, and then even some of the pirates in Iceland started to think this was an official title. It was just a joke. So anyway, but it's really healthy, and I think if you were ever to do an experiment with this in non-serious way, but serious in the sense that it would be a part of a strategy, just make sure to get the person that's most reluctant to do it, because anybody that has a leader aspirations in their belly should be automatically disqualified.
Yeah, history has shown us that
yes.
fake leaders turning into real ones.
Yes, very dangerous.
Yeah. We spoke about the whistleblower as the lone hero that we look up to, and
well, some of us. I mean, a lot of people really think they are traitors.
I know. Yeah.
So.
But let's shift a little bit from whistleblowers to what is whistleblowing part of, really? Like, you once said that there is the need to create platforms for us to engage and inform ourselves, or be active in public life, not only political life, but basically public life. In these last weeks and months, we have seen a surge of people being more active. We've seen protests. I think the Social Democratic Party has gained 6,000 new members since the announcement of Schulz as a candidate. But is that really action, or is it reaction?
I think it's a reaction, and one of my long-time dreams, and I think I'm going to actually do that once I'm finished with my parliamentary duties and can just be an activist poet again, is to create a think tank where we actually start to work on like a traveling think tank. I'm like constantly going to these conferences. I'm meeting like so many bright, intelligent, compassionate people that have lots of insight. And if you can start to work on building a vision with many different groups of people from around the world, so we can start to build on a collective vision on what we feel is the most urgent to change and experiment with, then it's so necessary that we start to know where we're going, because it's hard for people to start to envision a future. We don't really, I often say, okay, so we need to change the system, and I do actually have a really important piece to put instead of the current system, which is this new constitution that the people of Iceland collectively created together as a social agreement of how we want to be reflected in our highest law.
How high are the chances that this constitution will ever become reality?
I have no idea. I mean, it's still in the Sleeping Beauty phase, so I'm waiting for the nation to realize it's not the prince that's coming, but themselves to demand it. But I mean, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if I still didn't have faith in humanity and the ability of humanity. But I think if we don't know where we're going, we're just going to sort of be like the lemurs who sort of just go over the cliff. And I don't really want that for us. We're at a very critical time in history. I mean, the situation with the climate on the planet and just the environment is a very serious issue. And being an active person in society is important. It's just as important to create a community around you as it is to try to have an influence on the national level or international level, just to be engaged and to not be numb or fearful, and to start to work on a collective vision. And so I always say this, and I actually think I said it last year when I was here. Start to think about, how you would like to see the future. What do you think is the most urgent thing to do, individually and collectively, and who do you want to do it with? And just start to do it. One sentence a day, one thought a day in this regard is actually putting water on this really dry plant that looks like it's dying in our garden. And one can never underestimate the importance of, our impact as an individual. I mean, it's like one smile, one smile towards a person in a shop that looks tired. It can actually really have a huge ripple effect. Well, the same as if you're really rude. It can have a huge ripple effect. So we have to claim our power, and it doesn't have to be like a big bang. It can actually be just a little soft, butterfly wing. It can have just as much impact.
Doesn't that need to change, or doesn't that kind of thought process need to start in early childhood? Shouldn't we just try to go into the schools and have political education? I think Marina Weisband is doing that also. She's a former Pirate Party leading figure, created by the media. Are there ideas, any concrete ideas that you have of how we can do that and how we can make our young people already start to think about that? You spoke once that like we need to go out into the universities and spread things there. What do we need to bring to universities? What do we need to spread there? What kind of information?
Well, first of all, I think it is very important to, I figured, I never learned, I didn't finish college or anything. I decided to self-educate, and many people thought nothing would come of me. But one of the things I never learned about was even my constitution in my school. I spent 10 years in school, and I never had a discussion about the constitution. I never had a discussion about the importance of social engagement, it was. So I mean, it's like, of course, we should teach philosophy early on, and we should teach about practical stuff. Like was mentioned earlier, there's very little, if any, education on how to move in this new huge space that we spend so much time in, and younger and younger kids are going into these spaces, and we've just seen so much harm being done when bullying is multiplied by millions all of a sudden. Can you imagine being targeted like that? That's led to a lot of suicides. And all the other stuff that we know of, where people are encouraged to girls are encouraged to show their breasts or whatever, or if you haven't seen Black Mirror, you should. I always get so traumatized after each show I have to wait a month until I can see the next one. But I think early education on just functioning in a society would be very useful. And I think I would love to see, and I'm working on moving the idea of the Icelandic, or the philosophy of the Icelandic Modern Media Initiative, which was really to look at all the best laws in the world when it comes to really human rights in cyber. And move it into universities, because we need to train not only lawyers in how to deal with the issues of the digital dome, but I would also like to have studies on the psychological impact and all that. So I already have a university in sight in Iceland, so I'm just starting hopefully a successful project there. With moving this ideology into practicality because the Icelandic Modern Media Initiative was really all about making it possible to have to create a perfectly safe and encouraging way from the source or the material to the media platform, and for the media to be able to have it online no matter what, so that we could start to protect our sort of historical records. And then the same would apply for all this data that's being salvaged in the United States when it comes to climate science and so forth. I mean, we need these ideas that we need to protect our data, not only against authorities that want to gain access to our privacy, but also for historical knowledge. So if you haven't yet, please go and support the Internet Archives, who have been, they created the Wayback Machine, but they're also protecting our historical records. They are the modern Library of Alexandria, and brilliant library, and the librarian there is my favorite librarian in the history of humankind. I mean, there are just so many things we can do, and they don't have to be earth-shattering. They can just be, little things. It's also our responsibility to, like, there was this idea that the government should, in Iceland, should create a filter to filter out all pornography so our children would not see pornography. And, obviously it's really bad because it would slow down the internet, and who wants that? But it doesn't work because of, VPN and so forth. But why isn't the responsibility put on the shoulders of the parents to make sure that if they want to protect their kids from violent pornography or whatever, beautiful pornogaphy or whatever, then it's their responsibility to put that filter and actually have a discussion. I had to have a discussion with my son because he was like torrenting a lot, and back in the day with LimeWire and so forth, a lot of porn smuggled into these packages. So all of a sudden you would see something you didn't want to see. So you have to have discussions about these things. And so, in a sense, we cannot let the state solve everything for us. In the end, we are responsible as individuals as well. And this is what I feel is lacking. Everybody's sort of looking for quick fixes. But, just as it takes an effort to lead a healthy life, a lot of effort, to not fall for all the temptations that are bombarding us all the time. The same applies to be, a citizen that shows some responsibility, but, at the same time, we have agreed on, I don't know how it's in Germany, but in Iceland, Icelanders have agreed on that we do want to use our taxes to have a collective healthcare system that everybody has equal access to, no matter where they come from in society. Obviously, the right-wing government has been, working on privatizing it for a long time, and we've seen some disastrous situations, like in the UK with the new government, how they are targeting disabled people in a really disgusting way, and a rise of suicide because of that. So we always have to be aware, but we have to just make sure that we're aware in the fields that we're good at, sort of like liquid democracy, and we need to do more studies and experimentations with liquid feedback, or I like to call it active votes. It's so, like, when you say liquid feedback to normal people, it's like, what are you talking about? Like water, or, they don't get it. So we also, it's a responsibility of the pirates, is to take these really abstract things that we are fighting for and make them into a language that ordinary people can relate to. So whenever we talk about metadata, I mean, who is going to relate to this? Who is going to fight for, like, not giving the government access to my metadata? I mean, come on. Get more poets and artists engaged with working with you guys everywhere. I mean, because they are often very good at making metaphors that are sort of bridges between the history and the new formats.
One last question, like when you say we as responsible individuals, what would you say are the most important lessons? Like if that individual decides to become a whistleblower and blow the whistle on something very important, what would you say are the three most important lessons that we learned from Snowden, Manning, and Co.?
Well, that's a tricky question.
Like think about, I mean, Snowden thought this through based on the experience of Chelsea Manning. You know, he might have done things differently had she not been locked up in a cage.
I mean, it's really difficult to say. I mean, I think it's very important when you do this is to be prepared for, just like with anything you do that is, you know, it's going to have an impact on your life, is to, you know, think through the sacrifices you might have to make. If you're willing to do that, if you feel it's... I mean, in both these cases, both individuals felt a really strong... they felt that the information they had access to was so important that it needed to be in the public domain because they felt that it would be have a real impact and change history, which it certainly did. But, you know, I think...
so maybe one of the lessons would also be clear on why you want to do this? Like
I don't want to give advice to whistleblowers, you know, because I'm not... I don't want to be held accountable for if I'm giving advice to somebody.
Birgitta told me to...
No, I mean, it's like, you know, obviously it's always... I mean, these are situations that, like, and these examples are, like, earth-shattering examples, and you can't really transfer that over to the public servant that sees, you know, the corruption and how money is being spent. I mean, then the stakes are so high, it looks, you know, so... I mean, if you see something that, you know, you feel that, you know, is... should be in the public domain, there are no other ways to get it into the public domain than blow it out in the open, then, you know, do that in as safe way as possible. Do not be reckless with it either. And, you know, collaborate with respectable media in getting it out. Maybe you don't have to become the whistleblower. That was never the intention of Chelsea Manning, to come out. She was a source, and unfortunately she was found out, you know. And so, I mean, I think it's individual in every case. Yeah. So absolutely. It's hard to give advice, but just make sure that, you know, it won't kill you.
Or your beloved.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before we take questions, I'd just like to, you know, sum up some of the things that you said that either the pirates or we as individuals should do. Be proactive, not reactive. That's like something we should always think about, because right now all those political movements are more reactions than proactive, what you said before?
No, I'm not talking about the political movements in general. I mean, maybe in a sense, like one of the things that happens is that we have all these really ugly sort of bleached heads coming up in all these different countries, and these sort of, you know, they are challenging our sort of ethical, like on a really deep level. So we have to sort of react, like when the neo-Nazis march in town. You know, there is a group of people that want to come and protest them, and it's a very natural reaction. But what the traditional left and progressives have been doing, instead of like offering something else, the only thing they're doing is that they're saying you're wrong. So it's like, why are we not spending time in finding ways for us to be appealing, you know, as an alternative, instead of just, you know, nobody's going to want, except the people already there, is going to come and feel like at home with somebody that's pointing the finger. I mean, you know, if you are pointing a finger, there are other fingers here pointing at yourself. So that's one of the reactions. But I do think like we have all these protests now, and it's brilliant to have people come to the streets and protest. But you have to be very clear on what you're asking. Are you saying stop this and get this instead? Or we want this instead? Or are you just saying stop this? I mean, it's like, and we need to also have to start to work across spectrums. Because the division we're seeing, like I said earlier, this, you know, endless confrontation between groups is useful for who? That it's a very thin 1% crust, or 0.01% crust, which actually those that have the most interest in our world, they don't belong to any one political party, or right or left. They just use whomever, you know, they're like a virus that just uses whatever host is useful for them.
That's true. But that would be one of the points that you said, talk to your opponents also.
Or listen.
Like, or listen.
Everybody read Momo again and try to be a Momo. Okay. Do the Momo.
Listen also to the moral compass within yourself. Bring more knowledge to the ministries and to the uniforms, to the universities' uniforms. Yeah, to the military as well, probably.
I don't know. We don't have one in Iceland.
Yeah,
so
okay.
I can't really advise on that.
The Americans do that for you right now, don't they?
No, they don't. They left a long time
ago. NATO, okay.
Well, NATO is not only the Americans.
I know. That's why I corrected myself and said NATO. We need to look at the spirit of the law, not just at the law. So to say it's unethical but legal, that must change. It should be made impossible to say that. We need strong ombudsmen who give us some sort of guidelines for whistleblowers would be good.
Yeah, and as a whistleblower, you could go somewhere and say, you know, I'm not sure what to do with this information.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, should I try to? Is there a way inside the institution or the corporation for me to notify somebody? Is that safe, or is that the right way, or should I go directly to the media? You know, you should be able to get some sort of guidelines like that because each case is of
different.
Course different. Yeah.
Then the media need to not create leading figures for their own comfort. But sometimes you need to create fake leaders. We need what we learned today is
maybe
that
we can hire an actor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are, like you said, the USA actually have good whistleblower laws, but it was covered by the Patriot Act. So
yeah, I mean there are holes in it.
Yeah,
you know,
there are holes in it, but basically those laws are something you can look at. And
yeah, and I mean you do have like a really good expert in whistleblowing act here in Germany called Thomas Horen. Yeah, I think it's, I don't know how to pronounce it. He's really brilliant. So if you need any advice on whistleblowing acts, talk to Thomas.
Good. We need mentors, but not messiahs. We need more transparency about algorithms. That's like, in short, what you said. We need to watch Black Mirror.
Yes.
We need to teach and inform lawyers about the possibilities how to defend human rights or how to defend whistleblowers or whoever fights for a certain cause. But also we need more studies of the impact of, let's say, big data things and all that. We need more talk about that and more material to work from.
Also, just like on liquid feedback. I mean, it's like, is that the perfect? How can we amend it if we don't have proper studies and experimentations?
Exactly. We need to support technical archives. We need to
the Internet Archives.
The Internet Archives. And the pirates need to take abstract topics or names and translate them to a language that everybody can understand and emotionally relate to. Did I sum this up correctly?
Yeah.
That I think would be something very important because it's true. Metadata sounds very technical, but it actually comprises a lot of things. Yeah.
I often call it, because it really fits, I don't know how it would fit in German language, but Like in Iceland, we have this very known children's song about your shadow, and sort of how it follows you and grows and changes and so forth. And so I start to see my metadata or my digital persona as my shadow. Sometimes you can't see it, and sometimes it looks really big, and sometimes really tiny. But in a sense, we need to find something that relates to each culture and their sort of history.
Yeah. Right now, I think we're ready to take questions. So is there anybody to help us with the microphone? Wonderful. So I'll just point it out from here because I see them. I think you pointed up first.
So this microphone is
active?
You?
Whatever. Okay.
Yes, okay. It's a remark to Trump is that Trump is telling something the same, also pirates telling the people, I will give you your power back, yes, and I will act in your interests, yes. And we have also a little bit this problem with this right-wing populist AfD in Germany, which has the same point, more direct democracy. And so we found that a lot of people believe that they could do it better than the pirates. This is very curious, yes. But we have to think about it. I want to put a question for whistleblowing. We have a development also in the companies to set up whistleblowing platforms, yes, but in-house platforms, because they also like to have the advantage of whistleblowing. Because sometimes, for example, the Volkswagen, yes, when they have a better whistleblowing inside Volkswagen, maybe they could have prevented this big disaster. Yes, so also from the interest of companies, it may be to prevent disasters important to have whistleblowing platforms. And we think about why not to set up such whistleblowing platforms for the public, especially for the administration. Yes, it will be very easy. So there's a point in Berlin to set up a whistleblowing platform for the Berlin administration, where also persons inside can give information about things which going wrong. What do you think about this point? You can also do a legislation that guided institutions to have such whistleblowing platforms.
I mean, I think it's really great. At the same time, it's important to be aware of that it's very easy to abuse this. Because, like, for example, in Iceland, they created like this whistleblowing button for general public to notify if they knew if anybody was cheating on welfare. And obviously that can have a disastrous consequence. And it actually just really ruined the life for many people that because somebody had a vendetta. So you pissed off your neighbor or something. So we have to have, and this was something that it's so easy when you normalize this. I mean, I think it's great for the corporations to want to do this, but at the same time, if you don't have very clear sort of ethical code around that, it's very easy to go out of hand, because if somebody blows the whistle and is a public whistleblower within the corporation, so it's like a huge difference between a source and a whistleblower. So a source, anonymous source, is like what happened with the disabled people in Iceland, and I suspect that what you're talking about is anonymous source can notify about, because usually a whistleblower is somebody that's known. So it's like, has two different functions. So, a whistleblower comes forward to blow the whistle, sort of a physical way. Whereas a source is somebody, like a lot of journalists have sources and so forth. There's already quite a good laws to protect sources for the media. So that would be the first place to look into sort of ethical guidelines in that regard.
You were talking about changing laws or getting better laws for whistleblowers. And I had a feeling there maybe that's like standing at the mouth of the river and watching it disappear into the ocean. Maybe we could go to the spring of the river and actually change laws that, pledge of secrecy before you get a contract or go to the military. You always have to pledge your alliance or to secrecy. Maybe we could put there an ethical reason as well, excluding ethical reason there, just to actually right at the beginning of the process. Maybe that would be a better way. What are your ideas about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you need to do both. You know, I think the most important thing, the Whistleblowing Act that we've been working on, I was working on this with a member of parliament from another party, you know, who used to be the head of the Journalists Association, and got a lot of tips from, you know, sort of from the journalistic perspective, and then you also need to get it from union perspectives and so forth. So, like, not necessarily only journalists. So it's good to have a discussion about that sort of act, and particularly depending on sort of what type of society you come from. Like Iceland has 330,000 people, which means it is hard to blow the whistle there as a visible whistleblower. But when it comes to, like, I was once asked from students, you know, what I felt needed to be secret in Iceland, you know, or if everything should be open. And I said, you know, in Iceland, since we don't even have military or secret service or nuclear power plants or weapons of mass destruction, I felt it would be right if we would have the laws in such a way that everything should be open. But if, you know, and whenever, like by default, like you were saying, but whenever you need to have secrecy about something, let's say you are negotiating about something, then during negotiations you might need to not put everything out there, because that's not very good when you're negotiating. Or you need to have some secrecy about something, I don't know. But whenever you do that, you need to make an argument why it needs to be secret. And nation, like you here in this country, you have, of course, like all sorts of secret service and nuclear stuff and military and God knows what, and very important leaders and meetings like this one here that's happening elsewhere in the city. By making transparency the default and the argument for having something, asking for something to be secret, it's you know, it's really the best way. You know, I really think so. And we actually did a really interesting experiment with this in Iceland in 2009, because, like, you know, there was this big sense of learning from the financial collapse. And so one thing that happened was that in the Foreign Affairs Committee, it always used to be, you know, secret by default what was discussed there. It's really bizarre, because, like, you were discussing EEA regulations as well as, you know, other things. And so the chairman actually suggested that we would change or amend the laws for this, or the bylaws for this committee, so everything would be transparent by default, and if you needed to say something confidentiality, you'd have to ask for it. And I think this is a much healthier way to approach transparency.
Interesting. Any more questions?
We were talking about the ethics and the law, and isn't the simplest way just what is against the current law on our constitution should be freely revealed as a matter of whistleblowing content, Because currently, it didn't start 9/11, but even currently, there are abusive powers, for example, dealing with the data and surveillance of the citizens, which is against the constitution, obviously, and it is considered to be confidential. That means the government actually acts illegally against its own citizens. And that was an NSA thing, and obviously starting 9/11 and Patriotic Act, it's like actually common behavior of the secret agencies. And I'm considering that also within the private companies, because it's not a matter of loyalty, because if you won't whistleblow and you actually know about the laws being crossed, then you participate in actually facing the court as one of the member who actually did something illegal. So isn't that just like interpretation of, we don't have to really look for the reason to explore the information, because if it's an illegal act against the constitution, like the whistleblower should not be punished at all, and it's not even justified, like it was a secret information of the state, because the NSA cost, for example, was illegal, obviously.
Well, it's pretty obvious, that I agree with you. But the argument that we get from those that want to take, for example, Snowden in a court and try him for treason and try him for spying, is that he gave, their argument is basically that he gave the enemies of the United States access to classified information, blah, blah, blah. So when you have all these new layers, which we're actually not seeing, it's not only in the United States. Every time there is a terrorist attack in Europe, they sneak in disgusting, new laws under the pretense that they are protecting the values of this community, like in France. They said, we want to, protect these three fancy French words, and at the same time they were actually enabling massive invasion into French citizens' privacy. And it's really hard to fight it at that moment, because everybody agree on, I'm willing to give my human rights in order to protect us from this horrible act at the moment. And they do this always when people are in this shock. And so we always have to be prepared for that. If there would have been the Patriot Act to put on the table next to the Patriot Act to have a proper discussion about it, that you had two different ways to approach this immediate danger, then the chances of that being just passed through butter on a hot day would be much less. So again, we have also, those of us that see how the game is played, we have a responsibility to come up with something alternative to the current chess play. It's this new law that was mentioned earlier in the UK. It's like there was nobody was paying attention. And I see this happen in the Icelandic parliament all the time. There are lots of brilliant bills that should get a lot of attention, that would be enabling the general public more access, more information, more empowerment, blah, 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 less corruption, no attention. The only attention the only thing they're talking about now, again, for the 7th year of my life in Parliament, is if we should follow the initiation of the young conservatives, who is always to, because we have alcohol sold in state-run shops, and they want to start to sell it in normal shops, which creates a lot of buzz. Everybody's talking about it, those are against it and for it. And at the same time, all the bad stuff is sort of nobody's paying attention. So if I could only sort of figure out a way to expand the attention span, I would be so happy. Maybe there is some artificial intelligence about that somewhere out there that would help us think about more than one
thing at the time.
Any more questions?
Can I
Yes,
just say
back
one
there.
thing
Yeah.
before, so I won't forget it? I just want to say like a massive thank you and hi to everybody I met last year and that I met at various different pirate places. I think this event is like the most advanced pirate party event that is being hosted in our world. And I really wish we could get more people from all the different pirate parties to come to this event. And I just want you to help me to remember to lobby more for people to come here because it's such an important topic and it's such a brilliant hack to do this next community security conference. It didn't allow me to come to that anymore, so I don't know why. But just thank you so much. You're awesome. So.
Good. There was a question back there, the lady in the striped shirt.
Yeah. The light is so bright.
Hi. This is like the first conference that I've been to. Like I'd never heard about the Pirate Party before, but my partner is like an active supporter and he encouraged me to come along. Well, actually, I invited myself. But like, I'm not from a techie background at all, so like I am in education. And I find you a very inspirational speaker, and I've heard like a lot of crossovers, like about, you know, raising awareness for people like me, because I've never, like, everything that's been discussed is all like an eye-opener for me. And yeah, I was wondering, like Sylvia mentioned about taking it into education at like a lower level, like primary education, and you were saying that you do work in universities already. I was just wondering like how you would go about introducing this kind of thing to you know, to children at a you know, at a younger primary type age group level. Mm-hmm. I mean, I love the story about the shadow. I thought that was really fantastic, and I was like going into a creative space with that. But yeah, something like, how would you go about introducing it at a lower educational level?
Okay, this is welcome to a pirate event.
Thank you. I'm going to go and spread the word. I'll be telling everybody about it. So yeah.
Awesome. So I think it would be really great if somebody would make a little book. You know,
I
or
was
video.
thinking that as well when you were
know.
saying. I was thinking children's storybook.
Yeah. We can talk later because one former member of the Pirate Party, Marina Weismann, is actually doing that. She's put together a way of how to bring political education to the young generation, and I'm sure you can get in touch with her also about that. And good feedback, exactly. Yeah, but this is already currently being done by somebody who, you know, she's not a member of the Pirate Party anymore, only and solely for the fact that she wants to be a neutral messenger of educational things. Otherwise, she still is very, the Pirate Party is very dear to her still. So you should talk to her as well. Yeah.
I mean, there are so many aspects to, you know, how to move, not only about pirate stuff, but also just about your democracy and all these different elements and your constitution and how to be engaged and all these different things. And the more material we, you know, because I don't know how it's here in Germany and Iceland, we have this, you know, institute that sort of oversees which books are, you know, brought into the education system. I would start to look at just the material that is being, like the new material. Is there any new material brought into the schools, you know, for the past 10 years that, you know, obviously that either touches on this or if there's nothing. Plus, I mean, education today should be more than just books. I mean, where are the YouTube videos? I mean, YouTubers, like my son learned to, you know, put together his dream computer on his own by, you know, learning how to build a computer by watching YouTubes. So, I mean, it's like, that type of education is not utilized at all. So the tools that kids today are using, are not applied in the schools at all. So there are, the possibilities are endless.
Any more questions? Here, first row. Are you still okay?
It's not a question. I don't know who asked that last question. I'm not sure, but the Bundeszentrale für politische Bildung has some material for smaller children too, but I don't know whether it's valid for what you wanted.
Okay. No more questions?
All right. It's been a long day.
Yeah. Last words for today. Are you going to still be available for for individual talks? Or do you have to run?
No. I'm going to go and maybe, rest my voice for maybe 5 minutes. But I'm here to meet you guys. So.
Please feel free to approach Brigitte for anything.
Okay,
yes,
then thank you very much. We will.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sylvia.
We will be having a meet and greet at 8 o'clock, just around the corner in the Bavarian Stuben. And you're all invited to come there. 8 o'clock, we'll meet there. We can talk about everything. You can ask any questions and see you there. Thank you very much. This was Card Security Day 2.